It could have been bigger. It could have been bigger, but I didn't want to fall into judgment. Yo, 60. Holy. Yo, what is up, guys? Tips in the building. I just came back from an 8-hour stream. I will actually link that in the description below. But with that 8-hour stream, I learned a lot about the Spirit Blossom event, and I want you guys to get results and optimize your win ratio with all the pre-made decks. In this video, you'll be learning how to play every Spirit Blossom Festival deck correctly, as well as your best matchups for each one, your worst matchups for each one, and how you want to go about playing each deck. If you guys like my content, please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. I do stream on Twitch. I am currently streaming on an alternate account because my OG account is having issues broadcasting. So in the meantime, we'll be under Tippy_tips on Twitch, which will be in the description below as well. This guide is specifically for those trying to get the festival kit guardian. She's hella cute, don't you think? Damn, I'd actually hit that. Wait a minute.
What the hell did you just say?
Anyways, guys, with that being said, let's get straight into this, y'all. So to fully optimize your win rate, you need to understand how this mode is played. So there are 6 pre-constructed decks that Riot chooses out for you. These decks are no other than Certain Death, Poros, Noble Sacrifice, Scar Tissue, Take the Initiative, Nothing But Powder Monkeys, all with their respective champions. Once you choose your deck, every person starts with 30 health, and when a unit dies, that stat is transferred over to one random card in your hand. For example, if my 2/1 Averson Sentry died, his 2/1 would be transferred over to a card in my hand. So with that out of the way, let's go straight into these deck explanations. First on our list, we have the Certain Death. Reading the description does give you a little bit of insight about the deck, so be sure to look at those. Use ephemeral units to buff your most durable allies. So there are actually 2 ways to play this deck specifically. First way is where you actually just go full on face rush ephemerals. The point of this is you constantly kill your units as quick as possible so that you end up having a very, very huge Zed, Hecarim. Those are actually the top 3 main players in this deck. The logic behind that is that you're going to outskill your opponent way before they catch up how strong your units are going to be. Hecarim's Overwhelm is just going to demolish units. So that's the first playstyle of Certain Death. The second playstyle of Certain Death is playing around Deathmark and really taking more of a control aspect, kind of designating what you want to do and not going so far-fetched. This greatly helps in matchups versus decks where you want to target their champions or someone important. For example, targeting someone like a Kalista is great value, or a Vladimir because of his rejuvenation. It can be very annoying. Depending on which Hecarim playstyle you're going to be playing, you're going to have a better odds of beating other decks. Just keep that in mind, as that can really hinder or actually benefit you in the long run against specific decks. Powder Monkeys has a really wide array of minions, but the problem is Overwhelm easily can destroy through that. Noble Sacrifice is more of like a pressuring deck. So you want to have cards like Zed, Deathmark, Scenario 2, stuff like that. Fight for board more because you end up beating Noble Sacrifice in the long run. So really be wary and understand when you need to fight for value or when you just have to fight for face. Next up, one of my favorite decks out there is Poros. So build the buffest and toughest fluffs around. Basically, this is a synergy with Poros and Sejuani. I really love this deck because I believe it's so strong against most of all of these other decks. I would say it's really top tier, mainly because of Sejuani's ability where she can target someone. You cancel out a lot of people like the Kalistas, people like the Hecarims, people like the Scouts. And the fact that you have so much value in this deck with all of the minions that just eventually always there to chump block, a lot of the scouts are not going to be able to get there, and you're eventually going to outscale and beat all of those scouts before they can get to you. Same can be said for Certain Death. You could target Hecarim. If Hecarim's a huge minion and you're able to freeze him constantly. Poros also has a bunch of freezes, which makes sure that you make really good trades, and this is really hindering to decks like Certain Death, because when you're attacking with a Hecarim, you want to go face with you want to hit with the Overwhelm. If you're constantly being frozen, you're basically going to lose, because depending on how you played this matchup, if you spawned really early with hella aggression, you're going to lose the game. You might have a better chance at Deathmark, but at the end of the day, I'd say Poros does scale a lot better. I would argue that Poros' worst matchup would be someone like Scar Tissue, just because if you try targeting someone like Vlad, the whole point of freezing minions is you want to make really good trades. Scar Tissue is really wild in the sense that it uses cards like Transfusion to basically one-up the other opponent. And this is so strong because Vladimir has regeneration if he levels up, and at that point you've lost your winning condition with Sejuani, where you can get a free kill, and Vladimir does not have to really attack his ability will just hurt his own minions. He'll constantly rejuvenate board, and you're basically screwed because Sejuani just can't do much against the Vladimir synergy. Next up, we have Noble Sacrifice. Send the dead back where they came from to bolster the living. This is actually an insane quick deck that runs Lucian and Kalista. This deck is not to be messed with because it's one of the faster, quicker paced decks out there. So Kalista and Lucian really go hand in hand. Turn 2 and turn 3 is so early aggression that you really need a way to stop them. And the whole point of the Noble Sacrifice is before everyone starts stacking up their stats, Noble Sacrifice is trying to win the game where they have the advantage. You want to kill your units as quick as possible at the beginning so that you can constantly keep attacking with Kalista and Lucian combo. This makes sure that you get the benefit of all the dying units while your opponent is stuck there defending one time and again. They can barely build up any tempo and you just keep going and going. You can kill your units on your own with Ravenous Butcher, Glimpse Beyond, things like that sort, and you're just really quick paced. Noble Sacrifice is very aggressive just like Certain Death and really can outpower decks like Nothing But Powder just because they won't be able to have responses, especially with the Fearsome and the constant ephemeral that you're going to be doing. When Kalista summons an ephemeral, if Lucian is on field, that's an automatic Lucian pop and you can basically rally that turn. But Noble Sacrifice does lose to decks like Take the Initiative, something a little more mid-range that can constantly deal with Noble Sacrifice's bullshit. Or if you could just target Kalista, it's basically GG for this deck. So Take the Initiative really stomps on this because the scouts are able to attack twice, and then you basically end up putting Noble Sacrifice on the defense instead of the offense. We also have Scar Tissue. Your units live to fight and die a glorious death. This is very nice because it's got nice cards like Transfusion, makes favorable trades on your end and makes unfavorable trades to your opponent. Really strong cards in this specific deck are cards like the Crimson Curator, just because he keeps giving you more minions in field every time he's procced, meaning you'll get a bigger and badder board every time. A lot of the units in these decks are one of those minions like Unscarred Reaver, where if they take damage, they get more attack. So imagine setting up all these in the board, going full face, transfusioning a few of them to make sure they don't die, basically win game. And if that doesn't win you the game, Vladimir will literally just obliterate you by stealing from his minions to dealing damage to your face. The whole point of Scar Tissue is you really just want to attack with a full board and just kind of annihilate your opponent in that instance. Vladimir is so good because he can always rejuvenate, and that's so annoying, especially at higher levels. How this mode works is it really gives people a lot of buffs, but if your unit is so buffed up and he trades into a unit but then heals everything, let's say he heals like 40 HP, that's kind of busted because how are you ever going to destroy him? So this is really strong in all aspects as to why it beats Poros, depending on how you play that matchup. But the problem with Scar Tissue is it does lose to decks like Nothing But Powder Monkeys, mainly because Scar Tissue is going to constantly deal damage. But if you have so many blockers, it's going to be really hard. Nothing But Powder has cards like Von Yip, who makes your small minions pretty big, and it can constantly be annoying. So they usually trade evenly with Scar Tissue, and eventually you get by, and you can really just either try aiming for Vladimir if you can kill him, or just aim for his minions, and you're constantly going to deal 5 damage while your ephemerals and monkeys are dealing damage constantly every turn. This is a little different from Certain Death, just because Certain Death is able to kind of go wide every turn. So Nothing But Powder is not always consistently able to catch up to that, especially with the cards that summon the Powder Monkeys. It's really hard to, you can't even block with those, so that's really bad on your end. Scar Tissue, as I mentioned, is not like Certain Death. Like, once you have those units, if they're dead, they're dead. They don't just revive again. You don't have harrowing or any of that stuff. So that's why Scar Tissue really suffers against the Nothing But Powder Monkeys. So take the initiative now. Scout ahead to outmaneuver your opponent. It has the word scout in it. You already know what it's about. Scouting, of course. It beats Noble Sacrifice like I mentioned before, just because when you're scouting, you want to make really good trades and you're attacking twice. With scouts, your Noble Sacrifice just usually cannot catch up to the amount of to the stats that you're going to be displaying over here. So you're usually going to be stomping Noble Sacrifice, and again, they're going to be on the defensive, you're on the offensive. But Take the Initiative does lose to Poros because you don't ever want Quinn to ever get stabbed by Sejuani's ability. And usually if she has her ultimate, you basically just screwed every scout deck, and you have a lot of freezes and Fury of the North, so you can easily just stop any of these scouts from just outnumbering you or outvaluing you. Also, Take the Initiative can lose to Nothing But Powder Monkeys, just because you're going to constantly scout and you're going to be able to go really wide with Nothing But Powder Monkeys until Vi comes in and just starts wrecking everyone. So it really depends how you play that matchup. Last, we have the Powder Monkeys deck. flood the board with cheap units to summon massive monkey idols. Like I said, you want to look for Von Yip here. You want to go wide as much as possible. Make sure you have your powder monkeys on board. And eventually you get Vi and just start dealing 5 damage every time with Vi until you just win the game with this deck. If they have very important champions and you know you can target them, then you really should with Vi. Just because they can constantly target. It's not like Sejuani where you can only grab one person and make that trade then and there. Vi has the consistency to keep going every time. As well as you could possibly beat a deck like Poros depending on how you play. So if they're charging your Vi's or your minions that are like 1 or 3 health, they might be able to just overwhelm you and end the game. That's the only issue. But if you're able to get the Sejuani when they do that, and as well as for Poros, this is kind of a harder matchup because usually if their Sejuani is really buffed and they aim one of your small units and they go for overwhelm damage, you basically lose the game. But if somehow they're not playing it right and they play their Sejuanis the wrong way where it's more defensively, you can use Vi to just pull in a lot of the units, you know, and play more minions so she gets more attack and you're constantly dealing 5 damage. So it's all about matchup, guys. Know what champions you're versing, know how to beat these decks. Hopefully I explained how you can at least beat some of these decks, how you can win against some of these decks. Make sure you're looking at all the champions and what they bring to the actual entirety of the deck. I'm going to be showing you guys a few clips of my Blossom games. Hopefully it's not going to be too much. It's not going to be too long. Just hopefully you can get the feel and see kind of how you want to play it. And some of them were pretty epic. So yeah, if you guys liked the video, again, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. I'm going to be dropping more videos like always. I'll catch you guys on the next vid, so take it easy. Bro, I don't even think it's bad to be simping for your girl, to be honest. It's your girl.